All right, welcome back, Hudson. You've been on twice now, I think, for debates and a
hmm
foreign affairs podcast episode coming soon. But we'll start off the debate over the existence of first cause or creator, the origins of the universe, if you will. So we'll each have 2 minutes to make our opening statements, and I'll begin with mine. I would say, based on the qualitative observations made but using the universe and logic would lead to the conclusion that there must be a first cause or creator of some kind.
And then going towards my side of the aisle here, I lean more towards the either what science has said to us, at least mainstream science has said to us, such as the Big Bang or an event such like that, or maybe a more agnostic sort of view. Maybe it's not the Christian God, maybe it's not the Muslim God, but it could be a creator that we just don't have a term for yet.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we'll go into explanations. I'll begin. I prepared an argument. So can we start off by agreeing that everything we know of in the universe is contingent or dependent on something else in order to be? So say, a good example, this phone charger was dependent in order to come into the existence by its manufacturer, and everything is contingent on something else in order to be.
So, could I offer a better, it's a
Yeah.
similar explanation.
All right.
Um, Everything is just based off the cause and effects of other things around it.
Yeah, contingency. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So in order for something
Just
to
more of
be,
a,
there has to be a cause.
mhm.
Hmm. And so,
Yeah, and then for something, yeah.
yeah. And so because the universe came to be, logic would suggest it has some sort of cause. And the universe consists of three basic, quote unquote, basic principles. At least for this example, we're not going to get into immaterial things, but this is just the material universe consists of time, space, and matter. So this first cause that logically would follow has to be immaterial because in order to create matter, it cannot abide by the rules of matter. So it's immaterial. It has to be eternal outside of time because it created time. It doesn't land on that timeline. There's no creator for the creator if the creator creates time. So it's an eternal, immaterial being, and it can't take up any space, which also means it can take up all space. So it's omnipresent. And I would argue, based on the fine tuning of everything we see in the universe, from DNA, which is basically instructions for how the human body works, instructions require an instruction writer. The pure detail, how our bodies function based off the code in the DNA, you can call it code, requires an intelligent first cause. So now you have an immaterial, eternal, omnipresent, intelligent first cause. And human beings, I would argue, have a preference for love and like to be wanted and to be longed for. So I'd assume this God would be loving, or this first cause. And so when you line up a loving, intelligent, immaterial, omnipresent, eternal first cause, it sounds a lot like a God.
Okay. Um, is that your reasoning for your side? Is
Yes, and
that,
I'd also like to add one point before
mhm,
the time's up. So everything in the universe consists of actuality and potency. So
mhm.
what's an example? This tissue or Kleenex is actually white, but it had the
Yeah.
potential to be, say, blue. All right. Because it had the potential to be blue, well, here, I'll backtrack. In order for anything to have potential, it needs actuality. Because if it isn't something, it can't be something else. It doesn't have the potential to be something else. And so the first cause would have to be 100% actuality. And one more argument, the argument from like infinity, like infinite regress. So basically,
Mhm.
everything, back to the first argument I made, the contingency argument, everything gains its power from something else. So like I'm holding this phone charger. Without my hand here,
Mhm.
it wouldn't be held up. Without my arm, my hand wouldn't be held up, shoulder, so on and so forth. and it would go on for infinity if the universe didn't have a starting point. But if it did go on for infinity, it's just delaying the explanation for how I'm able to hold this thing. So at some point in time, there had to have been a first cause, regardless of what that is. But based on the observations we can make on the universe, I would argue it's an immaterial, eternal, omnipresent, loving, intelligent, possibly more first cause.
Okay. So my evidence for my belief in more of the agnostic or the Big Bang sort of approach, which is considerably, at least equally mainstream as your viewpoint here, is that as we know, something big did happen many billions of years ago, which did spew out a lot of matter. We can still see the effects of it today. We've recorded the effects of it today. We've documented it very well. We are still learning more about it, and we believe that to be the starting point of the universe. Now, as we stated before, something has to have caused it, and now we know everything that's affected it. My thinking with this is that something outside the universe, outside of nothing, you cannot be outside of nothing. Let's say I'm in a room. Well, I'm actually outside of a room, and there's stuff on the inside of it. There's nothing in there, it's just an empty room. I cannot say, oh, I snap my fingers and now something has happened inside nothing. Something has to have already existed inside it in order to create that thing. So there could have very well been another event before that caused the Big Bang. Everything as we know it is a chain of reactions. How far back that chain of reactions goes, we don't know yet. How far it will go, we also don't know yet. We know some of its lasting effects currently, like cosmic background radiation, which actually helps us measure distances between like galaxies or so on and so forth. It helps us measure distances in space. But we can see a lot of the effects from it now. We know something is happening after it. We just don't know yet what's happened before it. And for us as humans to say, we don't quite know everything yet, and then point it to being a God that is all perfect, all knowing, all good, all powerful, is more idealism, in my opinion. Because as humans, we are imbued, whether it is by a creator or whether it's by happenstance or by societal norms that we've created, to be hopeful, to want progress, to look towards the future. So, yes, for a lot of people, seeing this ideal figure of a perfect God, someone that has created us in order to be perfect, to try and attain the status of perfectness, is like plays into wishful thinking. We all Humanity creates things around us to fit our own narratives. Like the earlier sciences of the Catholic Church, let's say, they really did not like the heliocentric theory because they believed it challenges their church doctrine at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I mean, there's plenty of examples. I mean, we can go into the Hindus, we can go into the Sikhs. I forget which one about the Sikhs there was, but there was the Ming in believing that dragons existed. We obviously know now that they didn't, and it was likely just dinosaur fossils. But we go around creating these stories and these myths or these hopeful truths that could be very well founded upon something that was misunderstood, going back to like the Ming and dinosaur bones, or could be founded upon like happenstance, like especially when we look at Christian doctrine, Jesus dying for sins. We're seeing all this, and it's like, wow, this is incredible. We really need to believe in this guy, and we need to follow his truths and beliefs to the T, because this is how progress is going to happen. But yes, he was a prophet. He did great things. Plenty of other people have been great things. And not all the time we see religions be built up around them because they say, because I do all these great things, I am the Son of God. Did he die and come back? Maybe. I mean, it's very well documented by a lot of people, especially Roman officials, a lot of people back then, that it did happen. But we also have to think that was well over 2,000 years ago. things have been lost in translation, things have been altered, things have been changed, even though the Bible is actually one of the most unchanged historical documents.
I'm glad we can agree on
Things
that.
have been lost over time. Hmm?
I'm glad we can agree on that. I'm happy you
Yeah.
accept that premise.
No, like it's not crazy or completely not understandable to believe that he was a real person.
Yeah.
Now, was he exactly the son of God? That can be a point of contention. Was he an amazing person in his own right? Yes. Would I definitely have believed in him had I existed back then? Yes, because even if I didn't believe he was God, he was still incredible.
Hmm.
But tying it all back in, we create these stories in order to fit our hope. But based on the current information that we have now, excuse me, um, I believe that a lot of religion now does not create a perfect story for how everything was created. It only handles things that were mostly on Earth,
Hmm.
like thinking about black holes or theoretical wormholes or like terrain on other planets, Mars, Jupiter, things in our universe and outside it.
Yeah.
It only handles a very specific set of human creation and animals that were known at the time. Like there's nothing about horses. Well, there is actually in the Bible. I'm
Yeah.
thinking of like bison. There's nothing in there about them because at the time they were not known. So, in my opinion, a lot of like especially about Noah's Ark and stories such as that, I believe those were possibly made up in order to fit a sort of overall narrative in order to try patch holes as humans do in order to explain the things around us.
Is that your explanation?
Yeah, that was my final tangent there was
All right.
that we create stories that tie into the explanations that we want to see.
All right. We'll move into the rebuttal section. I'll start us off. So you mentioned I'm personally a Christian, so we're not debating
Mhm.
whether there's a Christian God or not. We're debating
No,
a divine first.
whether
We'll use the term
mhm.
divine. So
whether divine fits into creation.
yeah. So
Mhm.
I think logically it makes more sense for there to be something. Well, here, to your point that you can't exist outside of nothingness. You personally believe if I'm correct me if I'm wrong. In a purely physical universe consistent of only time, space, and matter, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
nothing. Yeah.
yeah. So outside of time, space, and matter, well, I use the logical conclusion that in order to create those, you must not consist of those. You don't need to abide by the rules or the laws of the things you create. Just like, for example, this isn't the greatest example, but people who write computer code don't speak computer code or whoever, like, that's not the greatest example, but you get the premise. You don't need to abide by what you create because you're the creator. And so just because they created time, space, and matter does not mean they can't be outside of it. Because in order to create something, you have to be separate from it. You have to be separate from time, space, and matter. So that would be my rebuttal to that point. And to your other point about the fitting the narratives, you're correct in that humans want to explain things they see in the most logical way possible. But you can dwell on this or at least bring it up later in this debate on what if atheists or even agnostics promote this ideology that there is no God because they don't want to appeal to a higher standard than what they are personally comfortable with. So it doesn't just go on the theists and the deists. It can also be put onto the atheists as well, that argument. I'll be done with my rebuttal. You can start.
So, using your own example, as you even admitted, it wasn't the greatest
Yeah.
example. But every ounce of code, let's say, that is written into creating artificial intelligence or coding a game or something, it all has the essence of their creator inside them. They also create the rules. If that creator created the rules that their essence, let's say, basically their code, their ethics, their beliefs,
Hmm.
it makes them abide by those rules, such as time, gravity, space, matter, then you would also have to think that creator would also have to abide by that. If its own essence, especially when we're talking about a material universe, when everything else inside it is designed in, let's say, the image of God, especially when relating to people, as a lot of the, Christian, Muslim, theology is that we were created by God
Hmm.
in order to, not even share his divine purpose, but like explore it, like create their own.
Hmm.
Um, we were endowed, I'm just gonna say endowed, by whatever created us, whether it was happenstance, it was just the right time that led to a chain of events that we exist now, whether it was by a creator, whether it was by God, whether it was by who, we have to follow the rules they made, the rules that would also apply to them because they made it in the first place. If they want to hold themselves to the same standard or even a higher standard, what's the standard for them? There has to be rules for them to follow that would be the higher standard.
Is that your rebuttal?
Well, part of it.
All right, yeah, you can
When
go.
you say when you say that it can be applied to deists and theists and atheists, all the ists that are not, the normal Christian or organized religion, let's say. Um, a lot of it does apply to everyone. That actually remind me of your claim again, so I do not
Yeah.
mess this up.
So I believe your claim was Christians. I'm not trying to strawman this, but I'm going to make it brief. Christians
Yeah.
create narratives to explain things they don't necessarily understand and also to comfort them to some extent. I believe that's what you were saying.
Mhm.
So my response would be,
Yeah.
what if hypothetically atheists were doing the same because they don't want to be held accountable by a higher standard, which would be God?
Well, when we say that when you say it has to be held like to a higher standard, has to be held accountable.
For their actions.
The first thing that comes to mind is the laws of human nature. We have like defined on here that humans naturally are loving, naturally want to explore, naturally want to find reason.
To
For
specify
some
real quick,
people,
I
yeah,
don't necessarily believe humans are innately good. I believe they prefer good over evil. I do believe humans are innately sinful and evil. Just want to clarify that.
okay. So then I actually have a rebuttal for that too.
All right.
Because when we look at, let's say, an all perfect God and all good God, if they are all good, all perfect, all powerful, all knowing, why would they allow suffering to exist? Why would they inherently create a population, a society, a species that is inherently bad, knowing that many of them, because of the way they were created, will suffer? That does not sound all good to me. Now, when we relate it back into the freedom of choice or the freedom of will, that does not sound like choice. If you know either it's my way or the highway, you're strong arming people into forcibly choosing your doctrine over the threat of eternal suffering. That does not sound good to anyone, really. But especially when you look at, the potential rewards, heaven, great place, no one better. But it just seems it's all too bully-esque. You're bullying people into believing your doctrine with the consequence of, if you don't believe in me, if you don't accept me, then I will forever banish you into the pits of hell. That does not sound like a fair, just, and good God.
Can I give a quick response to that just to
Yeah,
clarify?
no, of course,
Because
of
that's not
course.
necessarily what I believe. I personally believe because God is an all loving God, or the God I believe in. We'll go slightly off topic. That eternity with Him, otherwise known as heaven, would be all
Mhm.
love, all good, all positive things. But if you choose not to follow Him, which is up to you, He grants you that, and He'll give you eternal separation from Him, which because it's not in the presence of good, it's in the presence of evil. And so hell's a bad place because you didn't want to be with God. You chose to be separate from Him. But as a result of choosing to be separate from this loving God, you're naturally going to be in a place of evil and darkness.
You see, that's an interesting point that I actually feel like doesn't address the main topic of what I originally said, was that it's strange that an all good, all powerful God would allow suffering and evil to persist anyhow.
Mhm.
If we say that, yes, God, maybe hell is just the eternal separation away from everything good and holy
That's what it's
and
defined.
divine, and the pleasures of life, the happiness, the joy, then why would he allow, creatures to feel any suffering at all? Why would he allow, I know it's not a great example, but let's say Africa, for example.
All right.
Plenty of, thousands of people die there,
Yeah.
a day, whether it's due to terrible illnesses, malnutrition,
Mhm.
um, dehydration. Why would he, in good conscience, allow those people to suffer, even if he could step in and allow everything to be good?
All right.
But it seems to me that, I'm gonna finish
Yeah.
this so
Go ahead.
I don't lose the train of
Yeah.
thought here. But it seems to me that instead of being all good, he is selectively good. He is only good to those he believes will follow his doctrine.
All right.
Now, especially if we want to say that, oh, it's freedom of choice, freedom of will, that's not freedom of choice and freedom of will. If, as I've said before, it's my way or the highway. You either are with me or you are against me, and you will suffer for being against me.
All right. Can I have my response to that?
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah. So my personal doctrine, or what I personally believe, is that man was created in the Garden of Eden, which is basically, you could say heaven on earth for lack of better terms. It's you can
A
walk,
paradise.
yeah, walking with God. So basically, they were given the choice to not eat from one tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is basically
Mhm.
they can understand what is good and what is bad. They can be separated from this connection with literally walking with the Lord, with God in the garden. And so, because they disobeyed, they personally chose to bring suffering into the world. Be- Suffering wouldn't be a thing if they never ate from the tree. They would be the Garden of Eden. But because they did, that's what ultimately caused suffering because they chose. You would think of it with my hell example, kind of like that, just on earth. They chose to disobey God. And because of that, that's when man and God were first separated. And it only is grown from there. That's what the Christian doctrine.
Then, yeah. However, as I've stated before, they made the choice that they thought was the best, or at least what they thought was right at the moment. And yes, there were consequences to it according to Christian doctrine. Um, but as I've stated before, an all good God would not allow the choice for suffering to be made in the first place. An all powerful God would prevent the choice of, you know, this is going to be bad for how many billions of people that will exist after you. So I'm going to step in, I'm going to stop this and prevent you from creating suffering. I'm going to show that there will forever be good and there will forever be light, no matter what. Now, he did not stop that. He allowed the bad choices to be made. There were no corrective attempts. There were no. Correct me if I'm wrong, too, especially because I'm not too familiar with the story of the Garden of Eden. I just know the fall from heaven, and
I
well,
will make one
that's not even
correction.
that, but yeah,
Um, there
yeah.
were no attempts at rebuilding this bond. That's what we believe. That's why Jesus died on the cross
Mhm.
to basically get rid of the separation between God and man. And do you mind if I do a quick response to that?
Yeah.
So back to my original claim that humans have a preference for love and stuff. And like this being our first cause is intelligent or can be assumed to be intelligent and loving. In order to use those characteristics, it needs creation. And in order to love something, for love to exist, it can't be forced. It has to be a transaction between two independent, let's say, free thinking individuals or beings. So in order for God or this first cause to be loving, it needs something that can think for themselves and make their own choices to love and be loved by. And so it's not necessarily forcing. So, like, let's say the example often brought up by Christian teachers is that God wouldn't create robots because he wanted to have a personal connection, which I have some disagreements with, but it's the basic premise that God doesn't want to make the choices for you, because if he made the choices for you, he couldn't use his love and he couldn't have a connection with his creation. And that's ultimately what we believe he wants.
So correct me if I'm wrong with understanding what you're saying. You're saying because he chose not to intervene and he chose not to prevent suffering, he chose not to prevent anything bad from happening. And when I say bad, I mean, suffering, death, destruction, stuff along those lines. Everything negative, essentially. He is good because he allowed those two to make the decision they wanted. It's not inherently good if, let's say, how do I phrase this without sounding completely insane? Because there's no easy way for me to say what I'm thinking. But the easiest way I could say it is I'm sitting in a bar with Hitler. It's completely blown out of proportion example.
Yeah,
I
that's
know.
fine.
It'll make sense in a moment. And let's say he's asking me, and I'm, one of his best friends. Maybe I'm like a father figure or something to
Right.
Hitler. God help me if I am. Um, and he's asking me, this is what I believe. I don't think that all these, Jews should live in Europe. I want to get rid of them.
Right.
Is it my right to say, hey, I do not believe this is good, and I want to stop you from doing this? So I will stop you from doing this because it could create untold suffering. Or should I stay out of it and just remind him that, hey, you're going to be killing a lot of people. So should I stay out of it, or should I prevent him from doing it in the first place and creating suffering?
Response? You wanted?
Yeah.
All right, yeah. Um, Basically, back to my point earlier, that is it really love if you make the choice for them? The the whole point in
It's not even making the yeah.
the whole point
Could
of God creating
going
creation was for us to love him back, which not in a narcissistic way, but because he's an all perfect God, he wants to have a relationship with his creation. And you can't have a relationship with something you control. Otherwise, at the end of the day, you're just having a relationship with yourself. And I'm not trying to like accuse you of straw manning, but you're kind of making it sound like since the garden, Christians just believe that it's suffering forever and like that this relationship that's been broken cannot be repaired. No, we believe that Jesus died on the cross to for our sins so that we may once again be in heaven with God. And
yeah.
so
Um
the point is that making choices for someone, and like it's not like he didn't advise them. He told them directly, "Do not eat from the garden of Eve, or from the
mhm.
knowledge of the tree of good and evil, for you will surely die." And limiting their life, like giving them a lifespan, but also giving them separation from God, which humanity would experience until the death of Christ. That's what we personally believe.
Okay. Then I also have another question.
Mhm.
Why put the tree there in the first place that would serve as a temptation for evil in front of them. If he did not wish for them to disobey him, for them to disregard him, for them to forsake him, then why would he give them the avenue to be allowed to do that? Now, if he truly wanted them to remain within a close relationship with him, he would not have A, put the tree there, B, he would have left them to their own devices in regards to, everything else that's good and happy and pleasure filled and, the positives, let's say. He wouldn't have allowed avenues of access to the negatives, but he would have left the positives completely fine.
Yeah.
Humans, by nature, wish to look for the positives in every situation. You do not go and look directly for the negatives unless the avenue for the negatives was A, advertised, promoted, and more accessible enough that you believe that you could get away with it.
Right. So back to the premise stated earlier that God wants a relationship with his creation. And if there's no choice to rebel, if there's no choice, then there's no transactional agreement, and then you cannot have a relationship. If they were forced to be in the garden with God, then it wouldn't be a relationship because it's God's will, not theirs. But because he put the tree in there and gave them the option with the warning and the advice, which was rebuttal to your earlier claim, because of that, he can have a relationship with his creation if they want to. And they made the mistake to not listen to his advice and rebelled against him. But now, because of Christ, we can't have that amendment. So it's not necessarily a problem of God being in a quote unquote abusive, power hungry, or like trying to get people to misstep by putting it there. No, it's in order to have a relationship, you need transaction, and a transaction requires an option to say no. And that tree was the option to say no.
Okay, and then tying this back into a material complete universe, if we are going to say that he made that God, or
One sec.
yeah,
we got
or
5 minutes,
okay.
and so do you want to keep going or cut it short or what?
I have just like one final claim.
Yeah, all right. And then your closing.
Yeah. So tying it back into what we would consider a completely material universe, as I've stated before, nothing can exist outside of nothing already. There has to be something inside for something to exist outside. And something has to have happened in the first place in order to create that. And then something has to have happened before the original cause for that cause to even exist. So, if we're saying the universe was created by God, God is outside it, but God was also around before the universe and everything was created.
It's a logical fallacy to use the term before when it's outside of time, because before requires time. I get it's hard to use terminology like that.
If we want to say he's then there's no point in saying that, well, God existed outside of time, so there can't be really anything before him. Well, when we look at, the evolution of time and how it functions, time does not exist the same around all places. If we go, 20 light years away from Earth, going at the speed of light, time is speeding up.
Yeah.
If we're going speed of light, no, I had that backwards. Going away, time is slowing down. Going towards Earth, let's say 20 light years at the speed of light, time is speeding up. Mm-hmm. Time is not a consistent factor. We can't say something exists outside of time, because then we could also just say, this also exists out of time. How do you know? Well, we can't really explain how it functions other than, just saying like, yeah, it affects us because it, created us. Well, how did it create us? How did it, come into being? How did it start? And how will it end? Does it end? How does it function? What is that thing? we cannot create definitions for something that we can't prove even exists.
Uh-huh.
So
And that's
that's
why,
just my final point there.
as Christians, we say we don't know how everything came to be. We don't know every nitty-gritty detail about God, but based off logic, and then when logic lacks or evidence lacks faith, we can come to the conclusion with reason that there's some sort of creator. And if we get into Christian apologetics, which we don't have time for, but maybe another time, this story lines up, the logic lines up, and faith can carry the rest of the way there. So that'd be my closing argument.
Mhm.
Thanks for coming on, Hudson.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. Can't wait to film that international politics debate. Not even debate, but podcast. All right.